Welcome to the GAF1 Power Rankings, looking at the driver power rankings after every week's Grand Prix. 10 drivers will make these power ranking lists. They're not standings. They're just an effort to look at who's trending based on the most recent Grand Prix. Come with me as I run through this week's power rankings. Welcome back to my channel, Greg Allen F1. Power rankings coming in before we go to Portugal for the next Grand Prix, another new track on this year's schedule. But before we do that, I do want to thank everyone for 300 subscriptions. Blows my mind to have that many subscribers. When I first started posting videos a few months ago, I was completely amazed by even getting 10. Thank you so much for joining my channel and following me these last couple of months. And we're going to get right into power rankings as we head into Portugal. So, right off the bat, if you know my intro or you've watched other power rankings in the past, we have to start with the drivers who have either dropped out of my power rankings or had a notable week recently and I wanted to give them some recognition but are not really good enough to be in my top 10. So first and foremost, Alex Albon is going to drop out of my power rankings. Just the way that the Eiffel Grand Prix went for him in that Red Bull seat it went all the wrong ways for him that it could possibly go, and the radio transmission that we heard of him talking about the AlphaTauris racing him so hard, it really came off not looking too good for Alex Albon. Red Bull decides to retire that car. They claimed that it was for power issues. We hadn't heard anything about power issues that whole race up until that moment. It really kind of seemed like they decided to just take him out of that race that wasn't going well for him. Probably the worst Grand Prix we've watched Alex Albon have in Formula 1. Hopefully he can turn it around this week, but he's going to drop out of my top 10. Esteban Ocon. So another driver who's kind of in a similar situation to Alex Albon in Renault right now, where he's being completely overshadowed by his teammate. I did a video earlier this week that you can check out comparing him to Daniel Ricciardo and whether or not he's really being overshadowed or if he's kind of where he should be. But either way, not a great week, another DNF for him, so he also drops just out of my power rankings. And Romain Grosjean, and he's not really good enough to be in my top 10, but I do want to give some recognition here. Romain Grosjean had a really good Eiffel Grand Prix. He scored some points for the first time all season, and he really had a solid Sunday, and I did want to give him some recognition in a similar way that I gave Nicholas Latifi and Kvyat some recognition over the last couple weeks. Not going to make my top 10, but it's good to have his name there just to let him know he had a good race. Next thing I want to talk about, this is probably the hardest power rankings have been for me since the season started in this 6th through 10th spot. It was really, really difficult, and to be honest with you, it's because I felt that there were not a lot of drivers that deserved to be in there. Front of it was really easy for me to do, but this back 5 here, maybe from 7th on down, was not easy. But let's get into it. Coming in 10th place, McLaren driver Lando Norris. Lando Norris has had a consistent and slow fall from grace in my power rankings, as he has in the standings. McLaren came in like fire to start the season, and Lando Norris looked fantastic in the first few races, and that momentum has been pretty much lost. He does not have a good week again. It's been a consistent theme for him where he's kind of been moving back that midfield. McLaren in general has been kind of moving back that midfield. They looked like the 3rd best team to start the season, and Racing Point, Renault, have passed them, and honestly, even Charles Leclerc and the Ferrari starting to get ahead of these guys. Obviously I'm a McLaren fan, so I hate to put him down there. Part of me wanted to knock him out of this top 10, but when I looked at what other drivers like Albon, Ocon had done, I felt like he was still good enough to be in 10th, especially because he passed Albon in points. So, he's still having an okay season. I think that if we were going on the expectations of where McLaren was last year, I think he'd be probably okay. But the way they started this season, I was kind of expecting that momentum to continue and to get better all year long. So is Daniel Ricciardo, by the way. But either way, Lando Norris having a bit of a rough, maybe 4 or 5 Grand Prix in a row. I'd really like to see him turn it around in Portugal. 10th place for now. Coming in 9th place on my power rankings, Nico Hulkenberg. And I know that this is where there's going to be some interesting comments, probably on this video, should people come across it. But let me make an argument for Nico Hulkenberg. Nico Hulkenberg has had 3 weekends in the Racing Point car. He's gotten to race 2 Grand Prix, and he currently sits in front of 6 other drivers in Formula 1 in points right now. That's right, Nico Hulkenberg is ahead of 6 other drivers in Formula 1 standings, and he did it in just 2 Grand Prix. That, to me, is impressive enough to put him on my top 10 power rankings coming off of the Eiffel Grand Prix. We are now talking about Nico Hulkenberg possibly getting a ride at Red Bull. That's how crazy good his couple races that he's had to show his potential and show his ability have actually been for Nico Hulkenberg this year. You put him in a Racing Point, a car that is a capable and fast car. Nico Hulkenberg has impressed enough to where we might actually see him get a ride at Red Bull. So definitely, Power Rankings is all about what has happened recently to make a driver be notable, and are they trending up or trending down? I don't know that you could be trending any more in an up direction than Nico Hulkenberg is right now. He deserves to be on the Power Rankings. It may be my last chance all season to put him on Power Rankings, and he deserves to be there. He's been fantastic. And let's not forget that Nico Hulkenberg didn't know he was going to be in that car until well into the weekend, missed some practice, had a bad qualifying, and still raced that car up into the points and looked really good on the weekend doing it. He absolutely deserves to be ninth. It'll be the last time he's probably on my Power Rankings this year, assuming that no one else has COVID. But Nico Hulkenberg, really impressive, and I think we're going to see him in Formula 1 next year and possibly in an amazing ride like Red Bull. Coming in 8th place for me in my Power Rankings, Carlos Sainz Jr. in the McLaren. So Carlos Sainz, I've mentioned this a couple times in other videos and in other Power Rankings. He's just having one of those seasons where he just can't get off the ground and running, because he has really good Grand Prix, like he did in the Eiffel Grand Prix, and then he'll have a DNF right after it. Hopefully not this week in Portugal, not throwing that out in the universe. But when you look at his entire season, he's either been really, really good, having a good solid top 8, top 5 day, or he's not finishing the Grand Prix. Not all his fault, obviously. He's been caught up in some collisions, mechanical failures, and in general, McLaren is kind of going the wrong way, as we mentioned with Lando Norris here. But Carlos Sainz does have another good race. I think that if they could just figure out some of the mechanical failures on that McLaren, we'd see Carlos Sainz battling that top 8 to top 5 a little bit more. He's such a good driver, and I really hate that this year it's been a lot of, good Grand Prix, DNF, good Grand Prix, DNF. So he just can't seem to get that consistency rolling. Maybe throughout these next 4 or 5 Grand Prix, he'll actually get a chance to finish them all, and we can see where he's really at. But a good Grand Prix puts him up to 8th place. Coming in 7th place on my Power Rankings, the Ferrari driver, Charles Leclerc. So Leclerc has been really impressive to me this year. Ferrari has had all of the issues that you could possibly have at a major team. Their power units have looked bad, the drama of Sebastian Vettel, but throughout all of that, he keeps finding a way to finish in the points and sneak that Ferrari up there and way outperform that car from where it's at. Sebastian Vettel is a really good race car driver. I don't know that he's giving 100% effort at Ferrari. I really think that we're probably going to see next year that he wasn't. Not a good divorce there, but while that's going on, by comparison, Charles Leclerc's kicking his teammate around all over the place right now and making him look a little average by comparison. Obviously, everything that surrounds Sebastian Vettel is playing a role in his performances right now. I don't think he's committed to Ferrari, and I don't think Ferrari's committed to him. But with all the issues that are going on at Ferrari, Charles Leclerc is really putting in some good performances, and for someone who's podiumed twice already with that Ferrari this year, he consistently is getting a little bit more out of that car than what I think it's capable of right now, and finishing the points up there. He deserves to be 7th. I had him up there on my last Power Rankings, and I think that's going to continue. If Ferrari had a driver that was guaranteed a ride next year, say that Carlos Sainz was already in the other Ferrari, it'd be interesting to see where both cars would be. Would the other Ferrari maybe be up in the points closer to Leclerc? Hard to say right now, but I think he's really showing his talent about how he's getting a little bit more out of that when all the other Ferrari power unit cars are really struggling this year. So good job for him, 7th place. All right, coming in 6th place for me, Pierre Gasly. I wanted to move him up a little bit further in my power rankings here, but I have reasons of why the top 5 are where they are. But Pierre Gasly has another awesome Grand Prix, and his season has just been so good. It could be a little more consistent. There's room for improvement, but Pierre Gasly has put on a kind of a clinic of how to save your career when it's under threat this season. He's got to win. He's finishing the points consistently. He races his way up to 6th place at the Eiffel Grand Prix from a 12th place starting. And every race that he runs well and Albon doesn't, the questions keep coming up. I've done videos on it. You've seen the reports about it. And now we're talking about Pierre Gasly maybe having a chance to jump ship to a Renault, maybe replacing an Esteban Ocon down the line. Rumor mill is going. Who knows if any of that's actually going to happen. But Pierre Gasly is not only proving his worth in Formula 1 right now, but he's possibly opening up the doors of opportunity to go to other teams and maybe have some control over his destiny and it not all being Christian Horner and Red Bull's hands anymore. And I wouldn't be surprised if you see Gasly jump on an opportunity like that. If not next year, maybe the year after. Definitely a very talented race car driver from what we're seeing this year. And it'll be very interesting to see where he's driving in a year, but especially 2 years from now. Pierre Gasly, 6th place. Could have had him as far as 5th, but I'm not putting him 5th for this reason. Coming in 5th place in my power rankings, Valtteri Bottas. And I know I keep getting comments about the way I pronounce it. Sorry, I'll do my best to keep trying to pronounce Valtteri Bottas' name better. It's just the way I do as an American. Valtteri Bottas, though, sitting on 2 Grand Prix wins. He's 2nd in points. He has a very, very poor timing DNF in the Eiffel Grand Prix. Not his fault. Nothing he can really do about it there. It could not come at a worse time. He really needed to be putting the pressure on Lewis Hamilton and winning that race again. It looked like he was starting to turn that tides, winning the Grand Prix. Looked good in qualifying, but he gets passed by Hamilton in that race in a way I didn't really like. Maybe he was already having some power issues at that point, but if I'm honest, I kind of felt like he needed to fight Hamilton a little more than he did before he wound up retiring from that race. Regardless, though, with 2 wins, it still puts him in a place where I don't think he should be on this side of the board. I had him as low back as 6th a few weeks ago, but after that 2nd win, he still deserves to be here. He's 2nd in points. The problem with that DNF, of course, is that it kind of kills his chance to win a championship unless Lewis Hamilton has a string of bad races in a row. And as much as there are probably Formula One fans out there hoping that happens, it's unlikely that it will. So I think that he probably pushed himself out of a chance of a title, but he's still arguably the 2nd best driver on results in Formula One right now. Maybe not talent. I like Valtteri Bottas, but when it comes to results, 2 wins, 2nd in points. He's consistently up there. Just a really unfortunate DNF for him in the Eiffel Grand Prix. 4th place in my power rankings today, moving up another spot, is Checo Perez. Sergio Perez, it is ridiculous and a shame that we don't know where he's going to be driving next season and whether it'll even be in Formula One. I believe it will be. I think there's going to be opportunities for him to secure a seat for the 2021 season. This guy has been awesome. He is putting up results. His only not good races are races that he wasn't in. So he misses 2 Grand Prix. Every Grand Prix that he's been in, he's been a threat to podium. I think he will podium by the end of the year. He's had the pace. He looks fantastic. And I really think that when you look at how Checo has raced this year, it's really a shame what's going on at Racing Point. For him to get the result that he got at the Eiffel Grand Prix, knowing everything that's surrounding him, just shows what a good driver he is and his focus and when he's in a Grand Prix and in a Formula One race car. It's almost baffling to me that we're talking about the fact that Checo might not have a ride in Formula One next year. And it really is a shame that if he gets a ride, it'll probably be in a team that's not as good as Racing Point. I feel like he paid his dues there, and he really should have a ride at that team next year. I understand what happens with Sebastian Vettel, and honestly, I've been a fan of Lance Stroll this year. I think he's done a good job showing that he has a place in Formula One. But how do you look at this guy's performances and say, he might not have a ride next year when some other drivers towards the back end of the 20 drivers in Formula One have a ride? It's kind of hard to look at this and say we don't know where Checo's going to be next year. He deserves to be 4th in my power ranking. He could go even further up. He's looked fantastic. Wouldn't it be great if he got a win by the end of the year? That would be a hell of a story, wouldn't it? But for now, Checo Perez up to 4th place. Another fantastic Grand Prix. And as long as he's healthy and his car doesn't have a mechanical failure, he's been a top 4 or 5 driver all season long. So we'll see what he does coming into Portugal. Coming in at 3rd is the guy who finished 3rd at the Eiffel Grand Prix, finally getting back to the podium, forgetting to do a shoey, but we'll forgive him for that one. Daniel Ricciardo has looked amazing this year, and I've said it in so many power ranking videos before this one that he was going to finally get a podium, and he proves me right. Daniel Ricciardo has looked fantastic, and I think one of the biggest stories going into the end of this year and in the offseason is going to be Ricciardo's move to McLaren, because Renault has looked fantastic with him there. And could you imagine Renault if they had Alonso and Ricciardo? I understand him leaving opened the door for Alonso to come back, but that team looks really good. There's a very good chance that they're going to finish 3rd in the constructor standings this year, and it's largely on the backs of Daniel Ricciardo and everyone at that team that put in the effort to pass over all the other manufacturers in Formula One right now and put that team in a position where we might see them finish 3rd overall. What a turnaround for Renault. What an awesome season for Daniel Ricciardo. As a McLaren fan, I'm super excited to see him and Lando next year at McLaren. But you're going to maybe be sitting there next year wondering what could have been had Ricciardo stayed at Renault. He's got a chance of winning a race this year. I'm not going to be as 100% that he's going to win a race like I was about him getting a podium, but I definitely think he'll probably podium one or two more times this season, and maybe he could win a race if something happens that we've seen in other Grand Prix like the Italian Grand Prix. Awesome job by Daniel Ricciardo, and will be very fun to just watch him have that kind of pace for the rest of the year. Number 2 on my list is the number 2 driver pretty much all season on my power rankings. It's Max Verstappen. Verstappen has another good week for Red Bull at the Eiffel Grand Prix. He's always got the pace. This time it was kind of fun because it looked like he had the pace to possibly close in on Lewis Hamilton. I don't think Red Bull was that far off. Maybe if you look at Albon, they were. But for Max Verstappen, I really don't think Red Bull was that far off Mercedes. They were looking really, really good in qualifying. They looked good in practice. And Verstappen wasn't that far off lap times from Lewis Hamilton. I still think Mercedes is obviously a step ahead of Red Bull, but I think that gap closed there, and I think that's why you saw Max Verstappen have nothing but smiles throughout the whole weekend. It's another second place, but it's another week where he beats one of the 2 Mercedes drivers. It's another week where they just look like they're closing that gap and moving that needle to get a little bit closer to Mercedes. That's all you can ask for. Max Verstappen is the golden boy at Red Bull, and for a reason. He keeps impressing every single week. And wouldn't it be fun if Verstappen could get another win or two and maybe close the gap there to Hamilton by the end of the year and put some pressure on? If not for winning a championship this year, just maybe bringing some of that momentum into the 2021 season. And of course, that leaves the number 1 driver in the power rankings for the 1,000,000th week in a row. I don't think that's actually a number, 1,000,000th, but yeah, basically it's going to be Lewis Hamilton until it's not. I know that seems like a very obvious thing to say. Lewis Hamilton's the man. Ties Michael Schumacher in wins. Looks fantastic doing it. Maybe a little bit closer than he wanted it to be at times in that weekend, but Lewis Hamilton has secured his name in the history books and in the legend status, and I really would take a lot of misfortune throughout the rest of this year for Hamilton to probably get knocked off that top spot. He's been far and away the most impressive driver and team in Formula One for not just this season, but for many seasons in a row. Not much more I can say about it. Every single week I try to come up with some new things to talk about with Lewis Hamilton, but really it's business as usual for Hamilton, Mercedes, and that entire team, as they look like they're going to cruise to another driver championship and constructors championship this year. Maybe I'm wrong. So there we have it. There's my top 10. Let me know what you think in the comments. As always, thank you so much for watching. Please consider giving this video a like and a subscribe if you like the content. Again, thank you to all the 300 plus subscribers who are with me. And my last little plea to everyone watching this, please make sure if you're going to comment that you keep the comments somewhat clean. I don't want to have to block anyone, but YouTube does actually care if you use profanity, and I care if you lash out at me for no reason. So just watch the way you comment, and again, thank you so much for watching these videos, and I'll catch you in the next one.